Hello, world. I am Colin, and this is my show, Harness Money. What is an HSA? An HSA is a health savings account. It is an emergency fund for qualified medical expenses. Basically, an HSA is money that you are setting aside for any future medical expenses that you will have in your life or any of your family members. Now, there are limits to how much money you can put in to an HSA. If you decide that you want to open this type of account, you are only allowed to put in $3,650 this year into this account. Or if you have a family account, $7,300 per year. Now, why are there limits onto how much money you can save for healthcare in the future? Now, you can definitely just have your own savings account, which I would actually recommend is having this HSA account that you have, as well as a separate savings account that just is cash in the bank for any type of medical emergencies or just everyday medical expenses that you may have in your life. Now, the reason that there is a limit on the HSA is because it is tax deductible. The money that you put into this health account is tax deductible. It takes income off, it reduces your income that you make each year from working and reduces that amount that you pay taxes on to the government. So the government doesn't want you to put in $50,000 and you write off $50,000 worth of income, because that's tax money that the federal government will not receive. So they limit it to how much that you can put into this account. But this type of account is very young. The health savings account has not been around for 20 or 30 years. So what's happening is every few years, the amount that you can put into this type of account is increased for various reasons. Number one, inflation. Inflation right now is out of control. So the money that you're putting into your health savings account today will not be worth as much in the future because of inflation. That's number one. Number two is the cost of healthcare continues to increase. So the amount that you can put into your account also increases so that you can keep pace with the rising costs that healthcare is. Now, I have experienced this firsthand. I just recently had my appendix removed. I had appendicitis, and they went in and I had to go to the emergency room. You can't go to like a little clinic to have this taken care of. You have to go to the major hospital and admit you to the hospital, and you have surgery to remove your appendix. And then they want to observe you for a set number of hours or days after you've had surgery to make sure you're okay. Now, I went in there and I was in there for about 2.5 days. My bill was over $30,000 for this type of procedure. Now, thankfully, I have health insurance through my employer, so I don't have to pay that full amount. But that leads me into, if you have a health savings account and you have insurance, you must have a high deductible insurance plan, a high deductible healthcare plan that you are enrolled in order to contribute, to meet the requirements to contribute to a health savings account. So if you are a person that maybe has frequent medical visits or frequent trips to the doctor, or even maybe a frequent prescription that you fill, you may not want to consider an HSA because you may want a lower deductible doctor plan, healthcare plan that you can have through your insurance, and that will disqualify you from putting money into this HSA account. But I still think even if you go that route, that's totally fine. There's a lot of employers that don't even offer the health savings account. But I would still consider having a separate emergency fund, a separate set of cash set aside in order to pay for future medical expenses. I really look at the HSA as a supplemental plan. So what happens is when you reach retirement age, or when you're getting closer to retirement age, you qualify for Medicare. Medicare is great. It's government health care that you qualify for once you reach a certain age. But I would say that there are different levels of Medicare. So it's a good idea to have your Medicare plan, but to also have a supplemental amount of money or a supplemental plan on top of that Medicare, because Medicare may not cover everything that you want. It may not cover the greatest form of healthcare. It'll just cover your basic necessities and your basic care. It doesn't provide for service above and beyond what is already in the system. So to me, my HSA, I'm contributing today. I have a long time before I will qualify for Medicare or Social Security, but hopefully I can max out my HSA every single year up until that point, and then I will have enough money if anything were to happen and I needed to dip into savings. You're basically protecting yourself from having to dip into your actual savings that you need on daily living expenses. That is pretty much the essential form of savings, is that one day you'll be able to retire and you're going to use the money that you have set aside in the bank account in order to pay for your expenses. So that is why it's a good idea to really plan for your medical expenses. I can't imagine 20 years, 30 years from now what the cost of medicine is going to be, what kind of procedures they're going to have, what kind of drugs there are going to be on the market. Who knows what healthcare will look like in 20 or 30 years from now, but I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be more expensive then than it is now. Right now, inflation is out of control. We have inflation at 7, 8, 9%, if not higher than that. Who knows how long that is going to last? And you better believe that healthcare is going to adjust. It's going to get higher because of inflation. They're going to pass the costs of creating medicine onto the consumer. And then also the labor costs. There are a lot of people that work in the medical field that's going to drive up the cost of overall medical care. So the other reason that you have an HSA is because you can invest the money. You can put your money to work in the stock market. And that could be good or that can be bad. If you make smart decisions, if you're diversified, if you really have a good plan, a solid plan to make sure that you're preserving your capital, I wouldn't be very risky with the money that you are putting into the health savings account. There are accounts where you can invest in stocks, you can choose individual stocks, you can choose individual bonds, or ETFs or mutual funds or whatever. But I would consider really trying to be safe as possible with this money. Maybe not growing at 7 or 8% or higher, but maybe only growing at 3% is something that you should be satisfied with, just to know that you are preserving all of the money that you are putting into this account. Because the last thing that you want to happen is that you reach retirement age, like what's happening right now with so many people, is that you reach retirement age and the stock market has crashed and you've lost so much money, so much value from this account. No. You want to be relatively safe with this account. But we will get into a whole other video about investing the money into the HSA, all of the different options that you have. And this leads me to do your research. Don't just open the first HSA that you have. I made the mistake when I opened my health savings account in the beginning. My employer offered a plan. They said, here, we have this high deductible plan, and attached to this high deductible plan is this HSA banking provider connected. And what we can do is we can auto withdraw the money from your paycheck and put it into this bank account over here. And I said, great, this sounds wonderful. It sounds just like the 401k. But as I became a more sophisticated investor, I realized the problems that were with that HSA provider. Number one, they charge a high fee. So banks charge fees to provide you with an HSA account. So not all of them are created equal. You need to look at how big of a fee they are going to charge in order for giving you the pleasure of having an account with that institution. So number one, they charge fees. Number two, I realized you have to have a limited amount of money in cash, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I want to say that they required that I maintain $3,000 in cash in order to invest anything above that amount, which is fine. I'm like, okay, I've got my $3,000. But then when the time came, I finally had spent a year putting money into that account. And I was like, great, it's time to invest. When I went to the investment options that they offered, they were all mutual funds. They weren't the greatest investment options. I realized, oh, these are mutual funds that also have fees attached to them, and they were pretty high fees. I didn't like that they were charging a lot of money for me to invest in these specific mutual funds. They didn't offer the ability to buy individual stocks or to buy the Vanguard ETF with the low cost or Fidelity ETF that has a low cost. No, they only allowed a limited number of mutual funds. I don't like that. I want to choose the investments that I believe in. I don't want to choose what someone is offering me. And so I had to make the painful choice of learning how to do the HSA on my own. Stop going through my employer. Stop having the money withdrawn from my check and put into this account, but manually setting up my own account. And then I had to transfer all the money over. That is the crux of why you want to do your research. It's not very easy to transfer money from one HSA banking provider to another provider. It's a little bit of a process. So just make sure that when you set this account up that you've got all your ducks in a row and that you know that you are going to want to be with this institution for a long time. That's another one. You want to know that your banking provider is going to be there 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from today, because likely you're going to be saving for a long time in this account, and you want to make sure that your partner is solvent and that is not going to run off with money, or you don't necessarily want them to go bankrupt, and then you have to deal with all the bankruptcy deals. So just make sure that you're investing with a quality provider that has low fees, that has all the options that you want, and that is going to be around for a good long time. So this was my introduction to the health savings account. I encourage everyone to put money into this type of account. And thank you for watching this video. Remember, make good money choices. Till next time.